Welcome to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where adventure meets advice. I'm DNDWife, your artistic storyteller and dedicated miniature painter.
And I'm Dungeon Master Eguile, your seasoned storyteller with a flair for epic tales and a passion for bringing our worlds to life. Together, we are a couple of nerds.
Whether you're navigating the depths of the dungeon or the dynamics of your gaming table, we're here to explore the vibrant world of tabletop role-playing games with you.
Each episode, we dive into topics that every gamer can relate to, like, is there really such thing as too many dice?
Or how to keep the peace when your co-adventurer is also your co-pilot in life.
We share our own trials, triumphs, and tales from the enchanting world of Extraeus and beyond, all while connecting with you, our amazing TTRPG community.
From community polls to social media shoutouts, we want you to be part of our adventure. So grab your favorite set of dice
and join us as we embark on a quest to make your tabletop gaming experience more fun and meaningful.
This is You Heard It From Us,
where every episode is an adventure. Welcome back to You Heard It From Us, the podcast where we roll dice, tell stories, and occasionally argue over imaginary math. I'm DM Eguile.
And I'm DNDWife. Today we're diving into a debate as old as time, or at least as old as D&D. XP-based leveling versus milestone-based leveling. Which one deserves the crown in your campaigns?
We'll share our epic highs, our bookkeeping woes, and what the community thinks. Plus, stick around for our tips to make either system work like a critical hit. Don't forget to like, review, and join us on Discord to keep the chaos going. Now, you know, we've done a bunch of different styles, and we have had the kind of right way of trying each one. So
we gave them all a fair shot.
Right. So when we first started, obviously in my young DM days, we would pretty much just go by like whatever the book said, right? So
we had to. We didn't know any
we started
better.
with the Minds of Pendelver, as everybody does.
I love it.
And then we moved into Curse of Strahd, and so it was so easy because it would be like, okay, you know, you'd flip the page. It's like when the players find this, now they're level 5.
Then this. Yeah.
Right. So,
super simple.
So it was really kind of hand holding.
Yeah.
You know? So you know, but it was fun because I didn't have to worry about power scaling. Because like when you're an early DM, like you don't even think about how deep the game really goes.
True.
Right. So you're like, oh, levels, but no, a lot changes with levels. So if you know, are very, you know, frugal and giving them out too much too early, you could see your game get kind of blown out of proportion.
A little bit.
So it was nice in the early days to just kind of, you know, let the book take care of it for us. But, you know, given that we like to try everything, we also then switched to a more XP based system in our second campaign.
Yeah, we wanted to try it out. You know, we didn't know, we'd never done it before.
I think it was you guys, like my players were like, let's try, you know, XP
we
this
didn't
time.
know, right? And we'd heard we'd always heard the debate, right? Because it's been around forever. So everyone talks about how XP is so much better and how you can see your progress and be like you can see it unfold right in front of you. It's so much more real because of that.
Yeah.
And to an extent it was. You know, it really became an accomplishment where it's like, oh, we finally got the numbers to get up to this level. But honestly, after a while, it kind of became a job that I had trouble keeping up with. I'd worry about missing numbers, miscalculating. Sometimes I get the math wrong, especially after like 12 hours of gaming.
Right.
You know, my mind isn't necessarily the sharpest at that point. So
yeah, like I saw the point of it. You know, there is kind of something about where like you really can see like the tangible growth, right? Like, so it's like, okay, I need X amount of XP to get to the next level. And each time you complete something, you know, that little XP boost just kind of shows that you're getting closer and closer and closer to the level up. So it did make it feel more like, you know, you had a more hands-on approach to your character.
Very much.
But for me, it always became something more of like, okay, but do you remember? Like, it's like, I as a DM can't necessarily remember everyone's numbers. So you're in charge of it. But then it's like, okay, well, if everyone starts getting different levels of XP, now what's going to happen?
And then some of us, started leveling up way faster than others, or just at different times. And sometimes it was inconvenient.
Or if you miss a session, like obviously you're getting 0 XP.
Well, yeah, you don't get anything. So sorry for you.
But then, like, by the time we started our homebrew World of Extraeus campaign, we kind of made this kind of like pseudo hybrid version, you know, because I really wanted like that more flexibility, character growth, story arcs, all these things, not just combat, right? And so the idea was like, okay, there's like tiers that they all have to get to first to even essentially become eligible for a level up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you have to do this.
There
And
are
then
requirements.
and then it's a combination of like, do the players fight together for the first time? These momentous occasions that you want to reward that may not necessarily be about the story, but they're more about the table or the party itself.
Right.
So that's why we wanted to have this like kind of more where it's like, hey, everything's going to give you XP. You're not going to necessarily be told when, but you kind of know that if you play your story, you play your side quest, you do the things that your character is, it will be around the corner.
Yeah, it was really nice. It felt so much more natural, so much more organic. Like, oh, this is just the natural progression of the story. It's not because, the DM said so. So made it so much simpler.
Right? And so it's like one of those things where, you want it to feel like ours is kind of a more role play heavy table, right? Like you guys very much like to get into the scenes. And though we have combat every now and then, but there could be multiple sessions with no combat.
Oh yeah.
Right. So
Travel,
so in essence,
something.
right, like, if we played an XP game, our player, there might not always be a chance for those players to even get a chance because it could be, 3 or 4 sessions before a combat option is. But then it becomes like, well, are they going to just start a fight just so they can get XP?
Right. Or just to stave off the boredom sometimes. It's like, we've been traveling for 2 weeks with nothing.
Right. So as always, you heard it from us. We like to reach out to our community as well as we ask them a question as to what they believe as the same. This was a pretty easy one. Obviously, it was, which do you prefer in your games,
Milestone?
XP or milestone?
Yeah.
Now, I found it a little interesting because obviously I didn't think it'd be so closely evenly split.
Yeah. We knew it was going to be a fair amount on either side, but to be so even, wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was a favoring towards milestone, though albeit very small, right? But it did show kind of that there is kind of this new community that wants that more milestone, kind of taking a little bit of the math out of the game for them because they want to be more into the story.
Sometimes I don't want to sit there with a calculator when I'm trying to really be in the story, where milestone feels really fluid, especially in the long campaigns where not every session is going to be full of stuff to do. Sometimes it is the waiting game or the planning game, and you're not sitting there gathering XP like crazy.
I mean, unless your games are like giving you like shopping XP,
I guess, right? If your DM is creative,
right? Because there could be things where it's like, it could be totally, difficult. But for me, also on like the DM side of things, it totally reduces bookkeeping. Obviously,
I don't like math.
And I'm not saying anything. This is no accusation, but there's always like a level of trust that has to be kind of bridged between players and the DM and the game itself, right? And so anytime you add like subjective numbers that people aren't keeping track of, and suddenly somebody's all of a sudden like, oh, I just leveled up, and everyone's like, dude, I need like 4,000 more XP. They start to question, and I always hate when that becomes, rather than celebrating someone's victory, you're kind of going, wait a minute, did your 6 become a 9? Like, how did this go? How are you so far ahead of us?
Right, like we're 3 levels behind you.
Right. So for me, it's more of like, unless you are one of those people that loves to just track massive amounts of data, like your player handbook is just riddled with scratch notes and graph papers and stuff like that. I just don't think it's necessarily what you are. Though we see you out there. There's
a place
for
you
are the
in
people
D&D.
who started it all, right? Like they're the ones that picked it up for us. So it's really important. But I think really the reason why, and it was interesting, and we were talking about this before we started recording, is that most of our XP based people are our older, more old school players.
Yeah, because they're used to it, right? The systems weren't established back then to be so automatic as they are now.
And so it is kind of that funny where I think it's like, for things like dungeon crawls or very combat heavy focused, XP is like how you actually have your progression, right? Where no one's really talking. It's a bunch of barbarians breaking, demon skulls and fighting to save, and hopefully one of them makes it to the end, kind of thing. There's not these big narrative draws. So with that, if someone's like, oh, well, the milestone is when you get to, the second floor, and it's like, okay, but I had to kill like 400 things to get there. Can't I have a little bit of levels up in between?
Right, something.
So it really makes it where, you're like, you feel like, hey, you did it. You survived, and that enough survival, just like we as like humans evolve and gain, you pushed you over the limit. Like you go Super Saiyan now. It's that whole thing where it makes more sense also in a narrative versus like, oh, the person suddenly got more powerful just because they just finished saving the day. It's like, but what if they had that power before that?
Right. I will also say for XP based, it is really nice to be able to hold, if you are accurately keeping track of your points, to hold it up and be like, I went through this many points worth of enemies, XP, like, I don't know, whatever XP you got for completing whatever, a quest, something. You went through all of that and you got this many points. That's something impressive, I will say, for XP. It's just, I don't have time for that.
See, and that brings the perfect, segment to essentially looking at the pros and cons of both and kind of why these kind of beliefs kick in. And so like, that's really, I think, why a lot of people see Milestone, right? So like shows like Critical Role, Dimension 20, I think a lot of those systems, they use Milestone, right? So what we've seen is what we imitate.
A little bit.
And so when we're seeing, and it is kind of cool, right? It is that idea of like, okay, you spent all this time, you found and you reunited a father and a son and did all this. Now, mind you, no combat, but you had to give speeches and you were rolling persuasions and you were doing this and that, basically fetch quests and all of this, and you do all of this, and there's this like triumphant moment, and it's like, nothing happens. It's like, well, nothing happened. Well, you didn't kill anything. No. You didn't actually go fight something.
Yeah, so
and so
you get nothing.
Even though you did all this, you changed the very nature of this kingdom by reuniting the land, right? Yeah. Does not matter because you didn't draw blood.
Not a single drop.
So, I can see how it focuses more on like that narrative
other actions
progression.
Besides, the use of weaponry.
Right. And it's the, it really encourages the role play. Because for me, it becomes something like, Milestone makes everything important. Yeah. Because you don't know what something you might be holding. You might be holding a trinket of some sort where your DM's going, man, if you just give that to the right person and boom, level up. It's like there's so many things versus, okay, I need 6,492 points, and then I get my level up.
Right? And I will say, for Milestone, it also kind of gives you access to like more creative ways to solve problems. You don't always have to punch your way out of a situation.
Right. Yeah, and that was my thought too. And for me too, it's also way easier DM management-wise.
True.
You're taking out another thing that people don't want to count.
No initiative.
Right. You don't have to do that. It's such a hard thing of keeping track for your players. I mean, I have 6 players. Yeah. And then the players themselves keeping track, and then that kind of thing. But I mean, Milestone isn't necessarily perfect.
No way. It does have its drawbacks. A lot of the time, it does feel like it's kind of out of our hands, right? It is based on the DM's discretion, so there's not. At least we don't feel like there's anything we can actively do to level up.
Because it's that thing too, where like, what is a milestone, right? So if you're in, what is does it have to be a party's milestone? Like, is it when the party frees a town from control and every bandit now has been slain or taken care of, and now they get their level up? But what if it's something where, somebody has, their backstory is that their character has this incredible fear of flight or something. And then to the side, they make their character overcome it. And then they're going,
nothing?
Like literally my character just overcame a giant milestone of their life. Huge trauma that was written. But the DM's going, dude, you went for a flight. Like that's nothing. not really epic, adventure moments.
It's like, but to me it is.
Right. So it really becomes an issue of what exactly is a milestone.
Super subjective.
Yeah. And so that's kind of tough too. And then it also kind of like I was saying earlier, where it's like, it's weird sometimes because the milestone comes after the fact. Yeah. Right. And for me, like being such an anime fan and like DBZ, the power up comes not after you beat the boss. It comes right before you're dead. Right. Sure. Like that's when you get the next level, the next upgrade. So it's always funny in D&D for milestone to be like, hey, this fight would have been so much easier if you were a little stronger, but now you're stronger. You were stronger before, but now you are.
And you're so much better for it.
Yeah, and so it always cracks me up. And so the other factor, too, is that also with Milestone is you have to be real careful with transparency.
Oh, yeah.
Because favoritism can be, like, really cut out. Because XP is straight cut and dry.
Right? That you can't fudge numbers unless you're doing something.
And so that's another, the other opposite of that, if the DM maybe favors someone or, what we try to avoid as a husband and wife team is, it can be seen as, okay, well, I know that's a big deal, but the other players don't. And then I award something to that person and then it looks as favoritism.
Yeah, it does. And we've even run into that situation where it wasn't even meant to be that way, but it still came off as that.
Oh yeah. And so that's really why it's like I get why some of the more old school players who had that sense of independence are like, no, I want XP. I want to know.
I don't want to give that up. I want to know when my character does something great.
Right, because that's the idea. It's like, okay, there's like a clear line to like when I get something, when I grow, when I move forward. And so I think there are a lot of pros that come to an XP based system because of that, right? So much of D&D is unknown. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't really know this. I'm the DM. I know everything. But for a player side, I mean, you don't know the story. You don't know what things going on. You don't know when a momentous occasion is going to come up.
Yeah.
But you do know how much XP you have.
I can't plan for a session I haven't had yet. But and especially for the older players, I will say I understand the like connection to XP because it was the only sort of control they had because the earlier versions of D&D, the DM was doing all the rolling.
Well, that and there wasn't a lot of narrative.
Yeah.
It was you have come to the dungeon. The evil mage has your thing.
Now
you have to just go through a maze.
Yeah.
It was literally Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that's it. So, it's grown. It's become more about the story, the progression, the internal growth. We've really, like every other game, it's evolved in this really nice way, I think.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, is it's to really look at it is like, I mean, this is like gaming 101, right? Every video game, every game you play, you gain XP,
Absolutely.
You level up.
Yeah.
There's not really a system of, story happens, level up. There are very few games that play that way. Man, I think the one that really comes to mind is Chrono Cross, and it does it based on narrative, and it didn't get much acclaim because of that. So it is that thing. Like it's so indicative into everything we've been playing as kids of like RPGs. So it's like, hey, I need to level up. Okay, well, if I go out and I go kill these creatures and I go and I work, I'll level up. I'll grind. I'll be able to get that, and I can tell exactly how much and when I need to do it. So that I know, we're going to, try to rescue our friends in the fort. Okay, well, rather than going in and hoping that I get a level up after I do all the hard work and don't die, I'm going to go, you know what? Just like every adventurer would, I'm going to go train. I'm going to go work out a little. I'm going to spend a couple of days, pumping iron, slaying some beasts. And now I'm going to be a little stronger. And now when I go to the fight, I'm going to be more successful. And it's basically the training is now rewarded with the success.
That's nice, yeah.
And so that's where I really get but this kind of rolls into my cons and why I am very against XP.
Yeah.
It creates that grindy mentality. It becomes everything and everyone is just walking XP points.
Yep.
So then it becomes where I think a lot of murder hoboing comes out of the woodwork is that, it becomes, when your players come into, a forest, they don't go, what's in the forest? It's how many are in the forest, right? Like, so, they're wolves? How many wolves?
Yep.
Well, we know wolves are about 50 XP, so if we killed... And then I feel like you really get far away from the narrative side of it.
Because then you're weighing it, right? Like, it could be two wolves that are attacking something, but because there's only two of them, you're not even bothering because it's not worth the XP.
Right. And it gets to the point, too, where it's just about farming, right? So it is that game. I mean, how many games have, I know you're not the biggest RPG gamer, but for me, it's like there are many times where I will, especially Final Fantasy games, it's like, oh, the last boss, right? Okay, I'm going to now I'm going to stop the story. Essentially, the story is like, oh, the boss is about 10 minutes away from destroying the world, right? Destroying the world. And it's like, okay, I'm going to go train for what is the equivalent of like 4 years.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come to the boss. And I'm going to make sure I am the grossest beast of a machine by the time I get back. And then it goes, oh, well, that boss wasn't very, damn it, threatening. I killed it in 2 hits. It's like, yeah, but you spent 8-9 sessions of just grinding levels and did nothing but become a beast.
Of course,
what am I supposed to do? So it becomes that, like, you're really changing up kind of how you want the narrative style. Because if you are playing a story and you guys want to play as like narrative, but you're on an XP, then it goes, okay, I'm a wizard, right? Do I need to master the arcane arts and read all the books and travel the world? No, I just need to slay 15 million goats because each goat gives me 5 XP. And as long as I do that, I'll never die. And I will become an archmage in like 4 years.
I'll be fine.
I've never seen a lick of combat. I'm just the goat killer extraordinaire.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm an archmage.
I buy them wholesale.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's my goat farm and I'm just a slaughterer. I'm a butcher. And and that's I didn't even think about that. I mean, if you have NPCs, does that mean the butcher becomes like level 1,000 eventually because all he's doing is slaying small creatures?
You never know.
So it is that thing where I there are always ways though, I think, of balancing though, because as we always say, it's always somewhere in the middle than both sides. And for me, it's like always try hybrid systems, right? Granting XP for like story achievements, not just combat, right? So like, oh, your bard acts very bardy, right? Like does the typical bard stuff.
He did a bard thing.
But it's successful, maybe a little bit for there, right? Like
had a critical 20.
Which is totally normal too, because there are games now that reward for things other than combat, exploration, doing something, the noble way or the evil way if you are
morality
evil,
points,
right? If you play into your character, your character really, one of your players has a really good role play moment where they were just in it, and they didn't kill anything, but they were just really good. So hey, 50 XP. Those kind of ways, I feel like it's a little bit of a kind of a mix. It's like XP with plot armor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, I think. You really back up the system. And a lot of video games are like that, too, because you have the quests. And certain quests, you can't move past the story without reaching a certain level, right? So you do have to get the XP. So it is kind of that hybrid system we are seeing.
Gates.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So it keeps you sort of going. And I really like that. That's a good way to do it.
Right.
But I think I would recommend also you have to keep session notes. Make sure that you're on top of your information. That way, you take off a little bit of the burden from the DM too, because they're handling quite a bit.
Yeah, and it is that thing where, you can do a lot of ways to keep them engaged by doing a hybrid system because then they are counting a little bit, and that's maybe like also lessening how much XP you need to have. It can be things like markers. It doesn't necessarily have to be numbers. It can just be like, oh, you get like, I was always like Moncala, like little gems where you're like, oh, once you get 5 of these, you level up. And so you just hand those out. There's a lot of different ways to help manage XP other than just like filling in a bubble thing or just adding numbers to basically reaching like 180,000. Yeah, right. But really, we always can't say it enough, justify the fact that there is no one right way to play any kind of game.
Absolutely not.
It's always what fits your table. The best system is the one that keeps your players excited and your story thriving. And maybe, just maybe, doesn't have to make your DM cry over multiple spreadsheets and all the notes and all the numbers and all the people and all the junk. But it really is. It doesn't really matter. You find what's right. Like that's the way we started. We tried the books, we tried XP, and we were like, you know what?
We can do
We're
it
going to make our own. We'll make our own path.
We've done it enough now.
And it really helped out, right?
I really encourage you, experiment, try out different things, adapt to different systems, see what works for you, because you never know. Something that you thought was horrible or a system that you thought thought might never work was actually the thing you needed the most.
Yeah, right. And I think a lot of it too is a lot of people are afraid that things are set in stone. We've changed many rules, many ideas
fly.
multi-year campaigns. We've changed things.
Absolutely.
Because if it works, it works.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about being set in stone. And as long as all your players or your DM are on board, that's all that matters.
Yeah, the rule of cool reigns supreme.
I do that a lot. But that wraps it up for another adventure here on You Heard It From Us.
So what's your leveling style? XP, milestone, a secret third option? Join us on Discord, leave a review, and let us know.
Thanks again for listening, and may your dice always roll high. Unless you're the DM, then, mix it up a bit.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to You Heard It From Us.
We hope you enjoyed the adventure and picked up a few tips for your own gaming table. But the journey doesn't end here.
We'd love to hear from you. Join our Couple of Nerds Discord community where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and suggest topics for future episodes. Whether you're a seasoned player or just starting out, there's a spot for everyone at our table.
To keep up with all our latest adventures and episodes, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep the magic alive and connects us with even more amazing listeners like you.
And remember, you can find us on all major podcast platforms. Just search for You Heard It From Us and hit that subscribe button.
We can't wait to see you on Discord and hear your stories. Together, we can make the world of tabletop gaming even more magical.
Until next time, keep rolling those dice.
And may your adventures be legendary.